Let me take you back to a deeply traumatic moment in my childhood. The year was 2008. The show, American Idol. The stakes could not have been higher. My mom, my sister, and I had carefully recorded the season finale on our TiVo so that we could skip the commercials like civilized people. It was the showdown of the Davids, Archuleta versus Cook. The air was electric. Ryan Seacrest was doing his classic slow burn announcement thing. He stood between them and said, "And the winner of American Idol is David." And then the recording stopped. Just David, followed by a polite screen asking us if we'd like to delete or keep the recording. All three of us screamed like our house was on fire. "David who?" We sprinted to the computer with my dad, frantically Googling to find out who had won. For the record, it was David Cook. I was secretly happy because I thought he deserved to win, even though I knew everyone else preferred David Archuleta, but I digress. But that moment kind of sums up my relationship with reality TV. It's dramatic, it's ridiculous, it makes you care way more than you want to, and for me, it's also a weird little love language, a ritual, a bond. From Sister Wives and The Masked Singer to Love is Blind and Married at First Sight, reality TV has been threaded through different stages of my life like glitter in a carpet. You can't get rid of it, even if you kind of want to, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to. So today we're diving into it. Why do we watch reality TV when we know it's messy, dramatic, and possibly even scripted? Why does gossiping about strangers on screen feel so good? What do these shows reflect about us? And how do we handle it when they misrepresent something close to home? It isn't just about TV, it's about community, catharsis, control, and yeah, maybe a little chaos, because sometimes it feels good when the drama isn't yours. Reality TV has been a background character in my life for as long as I can remember. Not front and center, just always there, lurking in the corner of the living room like a slightly dramatic aunt who's just a little too into everyone else's business. When I was little, my mom was all about Sister Wives. I didn't think much of it at the time. The concept of polygamy was far beyond my little kid comprehension. But what stuck with me was how invested my mom was. She didn't just watch it, she talked about it, analyzed it, and gossiped about it with her friends like the cast members were people she actually knew. And as a kid, I believed her. I remember genuinely thinking for a moment that she must know them personally. Because who else would talk about people with that much familiarity, that much detail, and that much passionate judgment? Looking back now, I realize that was my first introduction to what makes reality TV so powerful. It feels real. It feels personal. Even if you've never set foot in a polygamist household, suddenly you're forming opinions about Janelle's parenting style or Robin's sincerity. You're emotionally invested in lives that are not yours. It's a kind of storytelling that bypasses the brain and dives straight into the gut. It doesn't ask for critical thinking, it just wants your attention, and more importantly, your feelings. But reality TV wasn't all seriousness and speculation. Some of my strongest memories are laced with its glitter and chaos. Watching American Idol was an event. We each had our own favorites, mine of course being David Cook, and we'd turn each episode into a family ritual. We'd gather around the TV, snacks in hand, remote at the ready to pause, rewind, and debate. The TiVo mishap during the finale, where the recording cut off before the winner was announced, is seared into my brain like a national emergency. It wasn't just about who won, it was about how we experienced it together. The panic, the laughter, the collective scream of "David who?" as we scrambled to the computer. It was hilarious, chaotic, and weirdly bonding. That's the power of reality TV. It doesn't just sit on screen, it spills into your life. And when The Masked Singer came around years later, it brought back that magic in a different way. My parents and I watched it religiously. The guessing games, the absurd costumes, the celebrity reveals. It was pure ridiculous joy. And we were good at it too. We knew Donny Osmond was the peacock from practically the first note. Watching it with them wasn't about the show itself. It was about the shared fun, the inside jokes, and the high fives when we got it right. As a teenager though, I pushed away from reality TV. I went through that phase where anything emotionally loud or unscripted felt beneath me. I thought it was fake, overproduced, and way too dramatic. Shows like The Bachelor felt particularly grating. Everyone looked perfect, every scene felt staged, and the emotional meltdowns in ball gowns, I just couldn't do it. I rolled my eyes and turned my nose up and went back to the scripted shows that felt more real, which, ironically, were anything but. But then Love is Blind dropped. It was like the genre had grown up with me. Gone were the pristine helicopter dates and shiny veneers. In their place, awkward pod conversations, emotional vulnerability, and the burning question, can you fall in love with someone you've never seen? I was in my early 20s, single and knee-deep in a swirl of dating doubts. I wanted love, but I was starting to question whether the way we all pursued it through apps, appearances, swipes was broken. And suddenly here was this show saying, what if love is about everything else first? Hook, line, dumpster fire. I was in. Fully. I binge-watched season after season like I was studying for a final exam in human dysfunction. I texted my mom and sister with conspiracy theories. I rewound scenes just to catch tone shifts. I analyzed each passive-aggressive glance like it was evidence in a trial. It was a glorious mess, and I couldn't look away. And maybe that's what really brought me back to reality TV. Not the spectacle, but the connection. Watching it with people I love, talking about it like we were insiders, feeling something together, even if what we were feeling was secondhand embarrassment. When I map out my reality TV journey, Sister Wives, Idol, Masked Singer, Love is Blind, Married at First Sight, it doesn't look like a collection of guilty pleasures. It looks like a timeline of moments, feelings, memories. It's the laughter in the living room, the text threads with too many exclamation points, the bonding over a show none of us will admit to watching, but all of us secretly love. Reality TV might be fake, but the emotions, the reactions, the memories, those are very, very real. There's a very specific feeling I get when I settle in to watch reality TV. It's not the adrenaline rush of a thriller or the emotional devastation of a heart-wrenching drama. It's something else entirely, something soothing, familiar, like curling up in a warm blanket that smells like popcorn and has just the right amount of chaos woven into the fibers. It's comfort food for my brain, and it's seasoned with scandal, glitter, and just enough delusion to keep it spicy. It's different than watching a well-scripted show. Those have arcs, those demand attention. They often leave you feeling haunted or emotionally wrecked. Reality TV is snackable. It doesn't ask much of you, but it gives so much back. Reality TV at its best, and sometimes at its absolute worst, lets you feel everything without risking anything. You can be outraged, overjoyed, indignant, petty, judgmental, forgiving, all within the span of one episode, and then just turn it off, walk away. Go make dinner, no consequences, no confrontation, no emotional hangover. It's drama that doesn't bleed into your real life, and that, my friend, is rare. There's actually a name for this kind of low-stakes immersive experience: benign masochism. Psychologist Paul Rosen coined the term to describe how humans can enjoy experiences that simulate danger, disgust, or discomfort, but in a safe and controlled environment. Think roller coasters, spicy food, sad music, or in this case, watching people cry in a pod while choosing a fiancé in week 2 of a social experiment. Our brains register the emotional intensity, but because we're not the ones living it, it becomes oddly pleasurable. We get the thrill without the threat. Think about it. In real life, conflict costs you something. It chips away at peace, at relationships, at your mental bandwidth. But with reality TV, you get to be fully immersed in conflict without being responsible for fixing it. You can yell at the screen, sigh dramatically, offer unsolicited advice to your dog, and feel totally unburdened when the credits roll. That's what hooked me on Love is Blind and Married at First Sight. Not just the mess of it all, but the ability to engage in the mess safely. These shows are like human train wrecks in slow motion, and you get to sit on the sidelines with popcorn and commentary. It's pure, unfiltered, thank heavens that's not me energy. And let's be honest, that can be incredibly therapeutic. And it's not limited to dating shows. Even shows like The Masked Singer with all the ridiculousness offer a different kind of comfort. It's emotional candy. Low stakes, high sparkle. The guessing, the performing, the reveal. It taps into childlike joy. It gives your brain a playground where nothing hurts, nothing's too serious, and everything gets wrapped up in under an hour. But beneath the chaos and the editing tricks and the stilted confessionals, there's something else happening. Parasocial connection. I know these people. Not really, but it feels like I do. I recognize their faces, their voices, their emotional patterns. I start to anticipate their next move. I form opinions about their relationships like I have some stake in the outcome. I root for them, I scream at them, I feel betrayed when they make the exact same mistake I knew they were going to make. And that's wild when you think about it, because none of it's real. Not completely. It's produced, edited, heavily guided by unseen hands. But that doesn't stop our brains from responding like it is real, like it matters. We become attached, we invest, we care. The brain doesn't care that it's reality TV. The brain sees a face, hears a voice, reads emotional signals, and lights up like, ah, yes, this is a real person in our social circle. Let's feel things now. And then there's the structure. The predictability. Reality TV is comfortingly formulaic. There are arcs, climaxes, cliffhangers, redemptions, downfalls. It follows rules, even when the people don't. There's something deeply satisfying about watching chaos unfold within boundaries. It's like watching a campfire, beautiful, mesmerizing, slightly dangerous, but contained. Maybe that's why I started craving reality TV when life got calm. After years of personal drama, after seasons of unpredictability in my own life, I found myself in a place of peace. And that peace felt strange. Stillness isn't always easy, especially when you're used to bracing for the impact. So I turned to reality TV. Not to recreate the stress, but to simulate the release. It gives me permission to feel without fear, to engage emotionally without fallout, to react fully without risk. Reality TV is messy, but it's my kind of mess. Contained, curated, comforting, a little unhinged, and always there when I need it. Until I finish the show I'm watching. So let's be honest. Gossiping about reality TV is half the fun of watching it. It's not just a passive consumption, it's a team sport. And when you've got a solid group chat going or a weekly debrief call with your sister, suddenly the show doesn't end when the episode does. It lives on in your conversations, your takes, your jokes, and your shared exasperation over who still hasn't figured out what a red flag looks like. It's communal, it's immediate, and it's deeply satisfying. I can't tell you how many times I've texted, "Did you see what he or she did?" while halfway through a Love is Blind episode, or called my mom just to laugh about someone's delusional confession. Or sat on the phone with my best friend dissecting a relationship like we're licensed therapists brought in for emergency damage control. And that commentary, that mutual analysis, that's part of the magic. That's how reality TV becomes ours. And it's not just a show, it's a ritual. It's gossip hour with popcorn. And yes, gossip gets a bad rap. We're taught that it's rude, harmful, shallow. But at its core, gossip is just storytelling with a purpose. It's how we process the world. It's how we make sense of behavior, especially behavior that confuses or shocks us. And it's how we bond. When we gossip, we're saying, "Did you see what I saw? Did you think what I thought?" Sociologist and evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar has actually argued that gossip is fundamental to human social structures. His research suggests that gossip evolved as a kind of social grooming, a way for us to maintain group cohesion once our social circles get too big for physical contact, like, say, picking bugs out of someone's hair. Instead of grooming, we started exchanging information about who's doing what, who's trustworthy, who's violating group norms. Watching and discussing reality TV taps into that exact mechanism. It's a modern form of tribal bonding, just with more fake eyelashes and wine throwing. Gossip creates alignment. It defines group norms. It tells us who's in and who's out, what's acceptable and what's not. It's not always kind, but it is revealing. It gives us a script to interpret human behavior, and reality TV just happens to provide hours of fresh content every week. And when the people we're talking about are on TV, strangers who signed up to be seen, who were cast because they're polarizing or dramatic or camera ready, it feels harmless, victimless, maybe even fair. These people knew what they were getting into. They signed the waivers, they wore the microphones. They went on national television to talk about their love lives, their trauma, their red flags. So when we pick apart their decisions or roast their poor communication skills or root for their downfall with a full heart, it doesn't feel cruel. It feels like commentary, like a post-game analysis of a sport where the stakes are emotional carnage and the MVP changes weekly. But beneath the surface of the hot takes and the memes, something deeper is happening. Gossip, especially in the reality TV context, is often a mirror. We talk about them to make sense of ourselves. It's easier to debate someone else's relationship than unpack our own. Easier to judge a stranger's bad choices than admit we made the same ones. Easier to root for someone else's healing when we're still learning how to do it ourselves. And there's something weirdly healing about that. Watching someone spiral on camera lets us ask, what would I do in that situation? Would I stay? Would I leave? Would I confront? Would I forgive? It's therapy in disguise, emotional self-inventory wrapped in snark. My husband and I have conversations about the reality TV episodes I watch all the time. I always tell him, "See, this is why I'm glad that we communicate as well," or, "Hey, this made me think of X, Y, or Z that we could do better." It's also how we rehearse empathy, though. Even when we're judging someone, we're still engaging with their humanity. We're forming opinions, we're reacting, and sometimes we surprise ourselves. Sometimes we empathize with the villain. Sometimes we forgive the hot mess. Sometimes we realize we've been there. So maybe it's not just trash talk. Maybe it's processing, reflection, a safe, socially acceptable way to wrestle with what we believe about love, trust, honesty, loyalty, and what we'll accept from the people in our own lives. Or maybe we're just messy little gremlins. Honestly, could go either way. So here's where it gets a little trickier. For all the joy and chaos that reality TV brings into my life, there's a fine line it sometimes crosses, a line between entertainment and misrepresentation. And that line becomes glaringly obvious when a show decides to explore a world that feels a little too close to mine. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is one of those shows. To be clear, I haven't watched it yet, but I've seen the commentary. I've watched the clips, caught reactions, heard reviews from creators I trust, and I felt that mix of curiosity and dread building in my chest. Because it's one thing to watch strangers implode in a dating experiment. It's another thing entirely to watch people who are supposed to reflect your culture, your religion, your values, and feel like they don't. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I know what it's like to have my faith misunderstood, flattened, and sensationalized. I've seen the media reduce Mormon to a caricature, either a punchline or a red flag. I've heard the tone shift when I mention my beliefs. I've seen the assumptions people jump to, especially when their only exposure to my religion is through outdated tropes or reality show confessionals designed to shock. And that's the thing, representation in reality TV isn't really about accuracy. It's about spectacle. It's about what sells. And religion, especially minority religions, often gets boiled down into whatever version is most extreme, most uncomfortable, most clickable. Scholars like Stuart Hoover and Lynn Schofield Clark have written extensively about this dynamic, showing how media tends to portray religion as either dangerously rigid or bizarrely fringe. And when producers select stories for reality TV, they often gravitate toward the most dramatic possible narrative: polygamy, patriarchy, secret rituals, because it plays better on camera than nuance ever could. So when a show like The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives markets itself as an insider view, I already know what's coming. Not context, not theology, not diversity of experience, just the loudest voices framed in the most provocative way possible. And even though I haven't watched the show, I can feel the distortion from across the algorithm. That's the tension I carry. That's why I hesitate. Because part of me does want to see it for myself. I want to know what's being said. I want to separate the fact from fiction and shout wrong at the screen when someone misquotes doctrine or collapses a complex cultural nuance into a 3-second soundbite. But the other part of me doesn't want to give it my view count. Doesn't want to co-sign a representation that doesn't represent me or the people I know or the faith I love. Because this isn't just about whether the show is accurate, it's about what people do with what they see. When you present something as reality, people treat it as truth, even if it's edited, even if it's exaggerated, even if the people on screen are outliers. That's the burden of belonging to a community with a public image shaped by media more than personal experience. And when reality TV plays with real identities, real beliefs, real sacred structures, it stops being just entertainment. It becomes a cultural shorthand. A meme, a stereotype, a weapon sometimes. That can change how you watch. It changes what you notice. It changes how you talk about what you see. It makes you more cautious, more critical, more aware of how quickly something sacred can be turned into a spectacle. So yes, I love reality TV, but I also know what it feels like to see a version of your world twisted to fit a storyline. I know what it feels like to brace for misunderstanding, and I know how it feels to be watching something for fun while also carrying the weight of everything it leaves out. And it reminds me that for all its glitter and chaos, reality TV is never just TV, not when it plays with something sacred. Here's what I think it all comes down to. Reality TV gives us emotional release without emotional risk. It hands us a buffet of feelings: joy, rage, pity, secondhand embarrassment, even hope, with zero strings attached. We don't have to fix anything. We don't have to mediate, navigate, compromise, or recover. We just get to feel fully, freely, and then we get to walk away. There's no processing, no cleanup, no awkward aftermath, just click, done. And in a world that constantly asks us to be emotionally responsible, reality TV is a rare invitation to feel big without consequences. It's not about rooting for the downfall, it's about catharsis. The ancient Greeks had tragedy, we have reunion specials. They had Dionysus and dramatic masks, we have Nick Lachey and wine-soaked confessionals. And even though the format has changed, the function hasn't. We're still gathering around stories to make sense of our emotions. We're still collectively gasping, cringing, laughing, yelling, connecting. And that's kind of beautiful in its own unhinged way. Reality TV is, in many ways, emotional cosplay. It lets us try on someone else's life like a costume, step into their love triangle, their job interview, their meltdown in a rented mansion. We get to react as if it's happening to us, but then we don't have to carry the consequences. We get to judge, to cheer, to mourn, to root, and then we get to exhale. And that's powerful, especially when our own lives feel like a constant juggling act of restraint, diplomacy, and emotional labor. Some of us grew up in homes where emotions were unsafe. Some of us lived through relationships where expressing a need felt like lighting a match. Some of us are still learning what it means to feel fully without guilt. Reality TV doesn't teach us those lessons, but it does offer a low-stakes place to practice, to experiment, to stretch those emotional muscles. Even the trashiest show has something to say about what we value, what we forgive, what we can't tolerate, what we secretly crave. And when we talk about it, when we dissect the drama, gossip about the players, analyze the patterns, we're not just making jokes, we're mapping the emotional terrain of what matters to us. We're drawing lines in the sand. We're saying, this is what betrayal looks like to me. This is what love should be. This is what I will never tolerate again. This is what I didn't know I still needed to heal. Sure, some of it is garbage. Some of it is exploitive. Some of it is produced with all the subtlety of a glitter cannon going off in a therapist's office. But that doesn't mean it's meaningless, because we're the ones bringing meaning to it. We're the ones showing up with baggage and curiosity and humor and empathy and trauma and popcorn and asking, what does this say about people, about love, about power, about me? We're the ones finding little pieces of ourselves in the chaos, sometimes painfully, sometimes hilariously, and realizing that even the messiest moments can offer clarity if we're willing to look for it. So no, reality TV isn't empty. It's comfort. It's commentary. It's connection wrapped in chaos. It's emotional theater we can walk out of anytime we want, but sometimes choose to stay in until the credits roll. And maybe that's not a guilty pleasure. Maybe that's just pleasure. The kind that lets us feel the thunder in our chest while staying safe and dry on the couch. The kind that connects us to each other in memes and midnight texts and oh my gosh, did you see that? Voice notes. The kind that lets us exhale, laugh, yell, hope, and then go to bed feeling a little lighter. Because in a world that asks so much of us emotionally, a little drama that doesn't hurt can feel like a minor miracle. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Context is Everything. If you found yourself nodding along, laughing, or yelling, David who? All over again, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and now on Twitch at Queen of the Britons. Depending on where you're at, there may be an F somewhere, there may be not, but it's generally QNOTBRITTONS everywhere. So keep an eye out for that. And hey, if you're watching Love is Blind right now, DM me. We need to talk. If you liked this episode, go ahead and follow, subscribe, leave a review, do all the things that make the algorithm gods smile. It helps more than you know. Until next time, may your TiVo recordings never cut off early, your group chats always be lively, and your drama always belong to someone else.